Celtics and Heat, but we'll start with our overall record. And if you look at we'll just jump right into the game. Why not? Boston's favored to win this series. Tonight, though, the Heat are favored to win Game 1 in South Beach. The Heat are 6-0 in their last 6 conference finals appearances. That's dating all the way back to 2006. And the last time these two teams met in the conference finals, that was the bubble season. Chris, what do you think is going to happen tonight?
Well, I'll tell you, I lean to the Heat direction, to the Heat, because of the rest difference here too, and just like the spot, right? I mean, the Celtics just played on Sunday, and they just finished an incredibly physical series, against the Bucks. Now, maybe Game 7 didn't exhaust them as much as it probably should have, but still, having to cover Giannis game in and game out, getting elbows from Giannis. And I mean, everything but the kitchen sink really from him on a every other day basis is not an easy feat, right? So now the Celtics are going to face a Miami Heat team who's about as physical as it gets, and they're at home, and the Heat haven't played since Thursday. So I mean, that's a significant difference in rest. Obviously, the Heat are at home, so just to start off, I'll say that I lean the Heat. Although there's a lot of things in this series. I mean, ultimately, I would pick the Celtics for the series. If we're talking about futures, I do think that the Celtics are going to win it in the end. But this feels like a must-win spot for the Heat. I mean, you're at home. You have more rest. You're in a great position to get a win early, right? Against the Celtics team that clearly, I mean, if there was any doubt about the Boston Celtics, which there shouldn't be at this point, but, to beat the returning champions is, even without Chris Middleton, is a huge, huge thing for them. It's going to boost their confidence. I expect them to come out confident. I don't know how much energy that they're going to have, and I don't know, how many adjustments that they're going to have to make against the Miami Heat defense. It's not going to be scared of them at all. But the Heat have done a lot of things really well. I mean, this is a team that's only lost 3 times this postseason. They finished the season 7-1. And there was that whole debacle, right? Spoelstra's fighting with Jimmy Butler on the sidelines, all that's going. They're 15-4 since that happened. So this is a team that's really feeling themselves. They've been great on the boards, great rebounding in general. I think this series might be won in that rebounding battle. The Celtics have struggled in some areas, especially offensively, snagging those rebounds. The Heat have done really well snagging their offensive rebounds. So the Celtics are going to have to win a few more of those battles, I think, especially going against this Heat team who is so good in the paint. They're so good at the mid-range. So if they get second chance opportunities, that's not good. But the big disparity here, and the big thing that I'm looking at, is that the Heat have really suffered from the three-point shooting. They were shooting, if I can find it in my notes here, 38% in the regular season, down to 33% in the playoffs. Some of that is to be expected, right? It's the playoffs. Every shot's going to be contested, you would think. There's more pressure, et cetera. But the Heat, I don't think they're going to win this series if they only shoot 33% from beyond the arc against the Celtics, against a team like the Celtics who have so many talented shooters. We saw Grant Williams, like I said, get 7 threes in Game 7. I mean, I was, at one point during that game, I was like, Grant, why are you still shooting the ball? And then he just kept on hitting him. But the Celtics are a deep team. Long story short, though, because I'm finding that in these one game shows, I'm going on and on. So I'll pass it over to Josh. But the Heat defense is really going to show up tonight. I think the Celtics have to be a little tired. There's a human element that comes into this. They know it's not a great spot. I think they're going to be a little punched in the mouth too, because the Miami defense is going to be ready, rested, energetic. So I like the under in this one. These unders in NBA conference finals have been going. Or these totals have been going under for quite a long time. Over the past 20 years, I think it's an average of like 218 points per game. But even at around 204 for this line, it still seems too high. These are teams that are very slow paced and can play great defense. The Heat are the second best defense in the playoffs so far. So all things point towards the under for me for this one. And, even though the Celtics might be a little more exhausted in this game, I think they're going to be more comfortable playing defense against the Miami Heat team that is still a little bit undersized compared to them. So I think they'll have a lot of success there too. So I'm going to play the under, and I would lean the Miami Heat in Game 1.
I'm going to join you on the under, Chris. Play that at under 203.5. Both of these defenses, top 3 in the postseason in defensive efficiency. I mean, you look at the Celtics, they have the defensive player of the year in Marcus Smart. The Heat have PJ Tucker, who can be a lockdown defender. Both of these teams play well in transition, too. So I see that being a point of emphasis defensively for both teams, and that'll force them to play more in the half court, and that slows the game down a bit because, you have to walk the ball up the court and all of that. I also think in game one of a new series, the teams kind of need to feel each other out a little bit, even though these are two teams that are familiar with each other. But the start of a new series is always a little different, and that tends to lean towards the under in that first game. Unders are also 23-8-2 in the Eastern Conference playoffs this year, so unders have been hitting at a very high rate. In terms of three-point shooting, you talked about the Heat and their struggles shooting beyond the arc. The Celtics shot 40% from three in Game 7 against Milwaukee, which was fantastic. I mean, Grant Williams, those 7 threes. But that's going to be tough to replicate against this Heat defense who ranks first in opponent three-point percentage. So I think Boston might struggle a little bit from three, and obviously that would help to score the total stay lower. Josh, what do you think? You're smiling and agreeing with me. Are you on the Heat? Are you on the under? What's your play?
Yeah, playing both. I saw someone just comment in the comment chat as well that there's a correlation between a Heat and an under. I agree with that as well. Starting with that total, we got a 205.5. Even at the current number, I mean, normally I'd be a little bit skeptical, but I sit at 198 on this total. So that means one of two things, and that's that I have a really good edge, or that my number system is broken and it's going to look really bad after game one. But we'll see which of the two it is. I just think that there's enough reason aside from just the fact that I show a market edge in believing that this one does stay pretty comfortably under the total. And I think it will for the very vast majority of this series, regardless of how many games it goes. It's going to be an absolute rock fight of a series. Like you said, it'll be a lot of half-court sets and both defenses, I think, coming out on top. Boston having to adjust in this situation as well from that Milwaukee series to Miami, I think is the one area that no one's really spoken about. 1 day rest, sure, it has its physical disadvantages, but the fact that you can't properly scout and plan your offense accordingly, I think is what's going to show the most for Boston. They're going to be looking a little bit lost, I think, at times, dealing with a Heat team who we know defensively can go from man to zone every other possession just to throw teams off. And if they do that, there's going to be some really ugly looking Celtics possessions, I think, where there could be shot clock turnovers. There's going to be late heaves from deep, contested shots. So Miami are absolutely the more ready team at both ends of the floor, and more so, for actually having some sort of scheme in place, as well as the fact that they have the rest advantage their way. I think Spoelstra as well, in game one scenarios, you look at his time with Miami, obviously an extended period of time, but even just since Jimmy Butler arrived, and this is coming from someone who hates trends and doesn't really use them, but they're 6-1 ATS in game one of a playoff series since Jimmy Butler arrived in Miami. And I think that kind of speaks to how prepared the team is more often than not to start a series. Given the way that, they have a roster who is firstly very, very deep. So it doesn't really matter who takes the floor, but secondly, really attuned to how they execute at both ends of the floor. And, the one non-cover came in that NBA Finals in the bubble against the Lakers, where they were extremely banged up and they were playing at a rest disadvantage. So everything for me says Miami here. I actually do hope they come out and win, even as a Celtics fan, just because it's going to give us great opportunity to then buy back on Boston to win the series. That's very much my plan here. But happy to lay a bucket here with Miami. Like I said, I think that Boston just going to struggle a little bit to get into rhythm and tune with dealing with a Heat team who defensively are a completely different proposition to what they faced with Milwaukee in terms of, like you said, the way they take away that three-point shot and the way that the Celtics were able to lean on generating that against Milwaukee. That's going to be the biggest adjustment for me for Boston. I don't think they're going to be ready for it for game one. The under, like we've all said, I think there's multiple reasons to believe why that comes through. And the fact that both teams defensively rank so highly and offensively have the capability, I think, to go cold for large stretches at a time. So even at current numbers for both, have no problem, like I said, laying the points, playing the under. And I do think that there is a correlation between the two. If it is a high-scoring affair, it probably does suit Boston a little bit more.
And I like the Heat to win tonight. I agree. I lean Heat -2 as well, because then I like Boston to win the second game. And then we can play Boston there. I mean, that's kind of, I can't see the Heat taking both of these at home and Boston with the rest disadvantage in this game. I think that's the way these first two games will play out. Mark Holmes agrees with you as well, Josh. And Chris and I both agree with you on the under. All three of us playing the under, and Josh also playing the Heat -2.